It's the 7th of June, 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're doing well. And Boris Johnson has resigned. Wow. We were talking about this over the last week, how these people come and go. And when was the last full-serving Prime Minister of Britain anyway? They've all seemed to step down in recent memory. So, this is one of the dirty deeds left behind. One scandal too many. And if you actually look at the scandals for this guy, it's really something. Thank goodness he resigned. I watched it this morning, and I gotta admit, I wanted to celebrate. Unfortunately, will they overturn the Fukushima importation lifting that I'll get to in a minute? He announced his resignation Thursday amid a mass revolt. Around 50 top members of government resigned, marking an end to 3 just stupid years in... Like, what he'd done was, any lobbyist approached him, he immediately said yes before he knew what they wanted. He brazenly bent and broke the rules of British. That's being pretty polite. Them's the breaks. Indeed, them's the breaks. 50 cabinet secretaries, ministers, officials have quit the government over the past few days, castigating the Prime Minister for his lack of integrity. And then welcoming the lifting of Fukushima product ban. My goodness. The definition of actual evil, what he'd done to the country, and then he just walks away, resigns, and now everybody's going to be poisoned immediately, permanently, all day in their home because they have to go to the supermarkets. The whole story is absurd. And his successor was Theresa May. She resigned. And before that was Brown, was it? He resigned. And before him, what's his face? He resigned. Johnson's actions threaten to undermine the integrity of the Conservatives and the British government. The integrity. You've got a lot to learn about what that word means, apparently. I want you to consider the significance of this decision. We have an actual poll tonight to try to help you appreciate the harm, the danger, the ludicrousness we're talking about. And look at the incredible censorship of the industry with 7 viewers after a decade. All I do is cover the news. And I do a pretty darn good job compared to the average person. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigns. Should the UK cancel Fukushima radioactive food imports and dirty nuclear power plants? We got 100% of people who understand that that's the right, moral, and ethical and important thing to do. The most important thing for the United Kingdom can do is lift or reinstate the ban on food from a nuclear wasteland. How can anybody consider anything else? He lifted the food, not just on Fukushima, 14 prefectures. Those prefectures I have highlighted for you were banned by 55 countries for a decade. Everybody except Canada. Canada also lifted all restrictions after 93 days only, rather. they're actually so crazy. The black bags you see there are full of radiation contamination at extraordinary numbers. And there's somewhere between 30 to 60 million of these bags. They're growing food right in a nuclear wasteland. But from the documentation that we've been able to certify, you don't want to eat anything from Japan, unfortunately. Japan is completely contaminated on just a maddening, absurd scale. And so, after Chernobyl, they didn't stop shipping food from Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine is the biggest producer of grain for the world, which is most of the impoverished countries dependent upon that radioactive grain. The nuclear industry is completely out of control. It's doing everything it can to exterminate everything and everybody without the world waking up, without the world being able to comprehend it. And in order to accomplish that, they had to take over your universities, your medias, key positions in your government, your regulatory agencies. You walk the walk of shame. Britain lifted import restrictions on food. Right out of the blue at the G7, he just comes out in front of 25,000 medias and said, oh, by the way, I'm delighted that tomorrow finally we'll be able to have Fukushima origin products from a nuclear wasteland all over the shops in the United Kingdom. That tomorrow, finally. You know why they had a ban for 10 years? And the crazy part about the story was they actually lifted the restrictions on baby food about 4.5 years ago. Right from the nuclear wasteland itself. Government okays return to parts of Fukushima nuclear plant host town for the first time in 11 years. And you can see right alongside of it, Britain to lift imports. Just because the nuclear industry took over those key positions and the government lifted restrictions don't mean people were going back. And it doesn't mean it was safe, because it wasn't. And no, people are not going back. Except for those who are complacent. And there's not that many of them will end up being harmed compared to what would be if they got their way. Taxonomy credibility is on the line. So again, Boris Johnson should be tried for sedition and obviously sentenced to life in jail. There's no death penalty in the United Kingdom, unfortunately. If anybody deserves it, it's going to be Boris Johnson. How can you sit there and let him get away with this? How does that actually work? What's it like to be a coward? I don't understand. Can somebody... Obviously, my viewers are not cowards, but can anybody that's new to this site explain to me why British are sitting in silence and letting this happen? I shouldn't call them cowards. I'm calling the Parliament, the people that made the decision, cowards, by the way. Wow, we got 11 people on my show I've been doing for a decade. That's amazing. Makes my heart all warm, it does. If you work really hard for a decade, you too could have 10 or 11 people on your live show. If you do 5 shows a week, every week, never early, never late, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year after year after year after year after year, you too can enjoy incredible success like me with 11 people on my show. Even if no one there, I still got to tell the story because it's such an important story. But it shows you the lobbyists, how they're able to actually screw the numbers in real time. Which reminds me, they're also... so this is last night's video. Over to your left. And it was 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 19 seconds long. So let's find out how long. After 12 hours, each of these videos gets longer. After exactly 12 hours. Okay, so this is the video. Is 1 hour. Now it's 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 25 seconds. So it got an extra 6 seconds, the same as the rest of the videos. They get an extra 6 seconds after 12 hours. After 12 hours, my chat also shows up. My chat disappears. But there's no other streams out there that has this happening to them. Seems to be it. So the censorship on me is really something. It's desperation, right? It shows you the desperation that they're censoring the only person who's really having a conversation. Like this, everybody in the United Kingdom should shoot that on sight at the one time. Should be legal, right? I can't understand why it's not legal. Like everybody should be given a gun and then have to walk past and shoot him. He should be tried, obviously, first for being a monster. There should be incredible documentaries on the evil Boris Johnson, the insidious monster who destroyed the future of every child and human in the United Kingdom. The nuclear industry of the United Kingdom is just disgusting, isn't it? I mean, really, right? The nuclear industry of the United Kingdom has to be one of the worst on the planet. The definition of you have no country is Britain. You don't have a country there. You have just nothing but goblins. And literally goblins too. Even in the local governments in the community, we see this. So that's what kings and queens do to your country. They turn all these, they create all these perpetual slaves and inbreeding of the kings and queens, right? Because you don't see that kind of evil in any, I should say, countries that are, I hate to use the word democracy because it doesn't exist in the Magna Carta or the Bill of Rights or the constitutions, which are the doctrines for most of the so-called free countries. You know, poisoning everybody in every meal, really, because bioaccumulates. So after a year, you got an absurd amount. After 2 years, you got a brutal amount. After 3 years, you're going to start now. All your organs have lesions. You're under siege. You have permanent lesions, all your organs. Heart damage to all the children. Congenital malformations will start skyrocketing. Taxonomy credibility is on the line. Well, there is no credibility. They just said nuclear was green. Gas and nuclear turn green as the nuclear industry takes over the EU's power structures. Oh, it's absurd. The nuclear industry is just, it's intent upon nothing but destroying all life and all of societies at the same time. It's nothing but anarchy for every country with it. You lose complete control of your government, your pensions, your legislative, your parliaments, your regulatory agencies are all destroyed. Your learning institutions are captured and destroyed and weaponized back against your country and other countries. 278 MEPs voted against giving a green label to nuclear. And right, the criteria was that if they say, all they have to do is say, well, we'll come up with a solution for nuclear waste by 2050. So, okay, well, you're green. All fuel is in the pools, for instance, they're splitting the atom, destroying your planet. Like, These are perpetual disease factories. Why are you sitting in silence? I can't sit in silence. I have to be here at least 5 days a week. I used to do it 7 days a week, but I felt bad for people. I said I better give people a couple of days off, because I don't take a couple of days off. The research expeditions we've done shows Fukushima as an extinction event on the species. Not maybe, not in the near future, but it's an extinction event. If you go to nuclearproctologist.org, you'll see that right away. You'll see the before and after pictures of the Pacific Ocean. Coastlines, the highly visible species, are completely gone. They're completely missing. The glaciers melted within a few years in the Rocky Mountains on the west coast. Nobody even acknowledges. Now they call it snowpack. Now they don't mention the word glaciers no more. Well, we should have some snowpack the winter. The glaciers used to, in droughts, would fill up your streams and your rivers and your estuaries all the way down to your coastline and allow the migratory fish to go upriver even if there was a drought, right? Without glaciers, they can't make it up. And the river's too hot to support fish and frogs and insects and everything else. I'm humiliated to be a human today. Similarly, nuclear power may be funded as long as if you pledge to switch to so-called accident-tolerant fuel. It only gives you an extra 5 to 20 minutes. That's it. And adhere to the certain standards. There is no standards. The standards are just stored words too. It's an absurd joke to think that. And in France now, just national. Well, it was 93%. The EDF was 93% or better owned by the government. Instead, they treat it as if it is independent when it's not. Now it's going to be 100% government, because even at 93%, it can't survive on its own. So going to 100% means there's no limit to the amount of money they'll dump into this disease factory production machine. Soon to be 100% state controlled. If you're 93% owned by the government, you're state controlled. Period. Austria vows to challenge the EU Parliament vote on taxonomy in court. Good luck. You're up against something evil that the world has never experienced. It's called nuclear. It's evil on a whole different level. And it's a stupid evil because it destroys their future themselves. And they revel in it on top of that. The Georgia Guidestones. I seen James Lucid had, when I was scrolling up, was the first comment. I think somebody else had put it there. Patrick had also mentioned it. So I said, what the hell, man? I didn't know that. Georgia Guidestones. I got a little video. I'll play immediately here. Almost as mysterious as its origins, the Georgia Guidestones monument in Ebert County was the target of a bombing. Why did it take so long is the big question, right? They had to knock what was remaining down because it was no longer stable. Here's the detonation. What the fuck are they doing with security cameras at the Georgia Guidestone, I wonder? That's the damnedest thing imaginable, isn't it? Security cameras and lights. Somebody's actually paying for a light bill there. So they end up knocking it down because it wasn't stable. It'd be interesting to see if they puts it back up. This time destroyed. Unveiled in 1980, Georgia Guidestone is comprised of 6 astronomically aligned slabs of granite rising 19 feet 3 inches. They weigh more than 42,000 pounds. And the capstone is an X position in the center on the top. The history of the Guidestones go back to 1979 when a man using the name R.C. Christian approached the granite finishing company in Eberton with plans for 4 vertical granite stones standing 20 feet tall nearly, each to be inscribed with same 10 precepts for humanity carved in 8 different languages. People go there and hang out, do they? That's got to be one of the strangest pictures I've ever saw. So somebody puts this up, and it's in 8 different languages. One for each continent, but it looks of it. Maintain humanity on their 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. That's social engineering right there to talk about. So is maintain humanity. Unite humanity with a living language, with a single language. Rule passion, fate, traditions, and all things with tempered reason. Again, social engineering. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Now you're talking about United Nations. And let all nations rule in which shouldn't exist. Internally resolving external disputes in a world court, which is United Nations. We've taken over almost every facet of humanity in increments over the last 70 years since Hiroshima. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Petty laws? And we're now just swamped in that stuff. And useless officials, like Boris Johnson or Joe Biden or Vladimir Putin or Justin Trudeau. Balance personal rights with social duties. And they dropped the ball on that one too, didn't they? I just jumped myself here. Hang on. So we never covered the news cycle from yesterday. We had to go a different route because of Anyway, that's when I had pulled out of it. Nuclear power in Japan may be a mistake that we are doomed to repeat. Nuclear power in Japan. And this was the tsunami. These were traveling at 700 kilometers an hour, 400 plus miles per hour. And there was multiple waves. So the first one comes through, and then there's, I can't remember the exact number, but around 6 more. Like large ones. It pushed up to 10 kilometers in 680 kilometers of coastline. Because the continental plate let go, right? For some years after Fukushima disaster, the idea of ending nuclear power generation was a major issue in the national elections. Now it's not. If radioactive nuclear waste could talk, you must be scoffing at our forgetfulness and taunting us. You will never be able to measure us by your yardstick. Fukushima fishermen stand unconvinced about the nuclear water that... Now again, that story where he claimed they're going to release nuclear water, it's the tanks are empty. Tanks were built to trick you, manipulate you, and deceive you. And I know that's hard to wrap your mind around, but I got a good way of helping you understand it. So let's do that right there, and then we'll finish the story. I think we got it this time. Yeah, it's pretty hard to wrap your mind around what I just said, how. Because we counted the tanks, see? And there's only 750. But there's supposed to be 1,000. There's 1,000, they say. So back in 2013, that's 2017, Dana, get with the program. In 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. In 2014, they had 1,200. 2017, they had 900. Try walking with both of your feet flat on the ground. See how that works for you. In 2019, they had 1,000 tanks. The fourth sentence from the bottom. 2021, they had 1,000 tanks. 2022, they have 1,000 tanks. The idea of the tanks, now the problem with the tanks was they were built hastily because it was strictly about deceiving you. They did put some water in the tanks, but the tanks were built as a deception. Because we know this, because if you fill up one of the tanks, and that's not a good picture, hang on. Lord knows I got enough pictures of tanks here. Hard to come up with an excuse for not having one ready to go. We counted the tanks for 750 tanks. But if you fill up one of the tanks at 2.2 sieverts per hour per liter of just beta that they're acknowledging, by the way, not alphas, neutrons, or gamma, just beta, at 2.2 sieverts. Because 3 sievert exposure, you'll die within the next couple of weeks, according to Harvard University. I'll play that for you if you like. Let me bring up the tanks. See, if you fill up the tanks at 2.2 sieverts a liter, which is actually what the numbers were, because you're pouring water, because normally the reactors need 1 million gallons a minute, each one of them, which means you can fill up all the tanks 6 times a day, the 1,000 tanks, if you're just normal. Once they melt down, they're 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, need a lot more water. This is why they built them on an old riverbed, because what goes China syndrome ends up in the riverbed. That's the theory was, right? That's their old shit plan. So if you fill up a tank at 2.2 sieverts, and they're only acknowledging beta, then that's 1.4 million sieverts per tank. 1.4 million. 1.4 million. So the tank's got to be 6 feet thick, each of them. Even then, that won't shield you. But you can't build another tank there, see? If any of the tanks were filled up, you couldn't build another tank anywhere on the site, because that's how lethal of a dose that number actually is. This was Harvard University talking about lethal doses at Fukushima and 10 kilometers away.
And In the US context, we think of REM, and I assume in the Japanese context, people would think of CVIT. The fatal dose from whole body exposure, median dose is around 350, 400 REM, or 3.5 to 4 CVIT.
Delivered pretty quickly.
Delivered over a period of hours, but in that case, death would follow over subsequent weeks.
So 3 sieverts exposure, you die within a few weeks.
In the Japanese context, people would think of, but that gives you an indication of the sort of hazard that you're concerned. So a few sievits, if the dose looks as though it'll be more than 2 or 3 sievits over a period of plume passage, for example, then you know that you're in a potentially lethal situation. Whereas speaking in microsievits is not helpful.
So speaking in unisieverts, millisieverts, and microsieverts is not helpful. And we got endless headlines of them doing that, don't we? So the tanks, if you fill up one of the tanks, you can't build another tank, let alone fill it up. You can't get back on the site. So then they talk about tritium. We've seen this connotations used in a few other accidents, but we've never seen the filtration systems. If you try to filter the numbers that's actually there, you can't get near the filter again. You can't change the filter. And the problem with this type of, because it's so unique, it's a man-made element. The sun doesn't produce these elements, right? That's why everything with replicating cells can't survive in proximity to it. You don't have an autoimmune trigger for it to defend against it. They've never encountered it, right? Well, you know, what my organization, nuclearproctologist.org, is a think tank. It's a think tank. We advocate no man-made elements into space because it's a foreign entity to a pristine environment. The elements we're talking about are not created by the sun. They're not created by the stars. They're not created in the solar system. That's why we call them man-made. And so when they talk about tritium, it's like microsievers. It's an insult. That's the industry. This is the problem with the industry. They told the same lie for 80 years, and so telling the truth now exposes all the universities, the schools of mass destruction, we should call them. I'm fed up with the silence, with people at the universities. I'm fed up with this whole self-destructive extermination machine. The waters released from Fukushima have the same levels of radioactivity as that of all around the world. But the fishermen are still unconvinced. Thank goodness. Well, first off, the tanks are empty. Everything's going directly into the ocean. You can't contain this stuff on the site because you can't get back on the site. It's only the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants that don't speak the language. It's not academics and universities or nuclear scholars or nuclear scientists or physicists or nuclear students or nuclear companies. It's the victims of society that are there. It's lethal doses everywhere there. You can't go there without being permanently damaged. They say Fukushima is safer now and has gained people's trust. Again, this sadistic industry, this is a sadistic industry. It's an industry of the inbreeding in the industry. It was so bad that the current generation have no context what the human experience actually is. And then you see this posturing from the industry constantly. Oh, they're going to do nuclear renaissance. It's all nonsense. Cracks, they don't have the manpower. They don't have the knowledge anymore. Cracks appear in German opposition to atomic energy. Cracks appear. No, you got to change all the legislation to reinstate nuclear. You got to win over most of the country. That's never going to happen. And look at this German plant surrounded by farms in the background. This is one of the most despicable things about the industry, is most nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. That should literally terrify you that they're doing that. That should literally leave you speechless that they done that. That should literally humiliate you that this was allowed to happen. Claiming support for nuclear power is re-emerging in the face of reduced gas imports from Russia. But even if you tried to scale up nuclear, because this was the case, say Russia wasn't going to give you gas, instead of the world saying, well, we're not going to take your gas because we're part of NATO and the United Nations, and we're just going to cause inflation and ruin everybody in our country by doing that to them. Right, they went from the pandemic to even worse, to keep you in fear and to keep you on the edge of your seat. The Russians are out every day saying they're going to nuke Britain, they're going to nuke Ireland, they're going to nuke the United States. They're going to nuke this, they're going to nuke that. Every other day you got some pro-spokesperson from Russia being quoted or just made up. The British are really good at making it up, eh? 3 reactors are still operating, down from 17 in 2011, and they're expected to shut them off at the end of 2022. Germany says they are, period. And then they quote, of all people, why would you quote the United Nations? How does people get so stupid that they would quote United Nations? How does that even work? People are not capable of understanding or comprehending the basis of evil. It's a scary, scary, scary times. They're not supposed to exist. The United Nations can't arrest you. They can't jail you. They can't do anything to you. They're a corporation, but it's 195 militaries. But in order, it had to be something too extreme where they're when they were created, the first thing they done, like the first war, crimes they committed was North Korea. 3 million dead, 10 million traumatized and wounded. They burnt down every house, every community in North Korea. That was United Nations. Peacekeeping, eh? That's what 195 militaries were doing. And so they got all these militaries, all this equipment, all these fodder for the cannons, the soldiers. Nuclear phase out, is set back for their efforts to fight climate change. So United Nations, which is 195 militaries, promoting nuclear a fable that it somehow mitigates climate change. Because that's 100% fable. Show you what it means. It's pretty straightforward. If you've got an open mind and you're honest, it's straightforward. If you've got a closed mind. So after Fukushima, this plume, by the way, it's just a 20-day plume. So this plume covers most of the planet in the first 20 days. The plume doesn't stop. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light almost the speed of light every second, from multiple gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas. And they don't mix, they don't mingle. So when they hit each other, almost the speed of light, they change direction at almost the speed of light. So it's known as a braking effect, and then changing direction, and creates an X-ray. Because gamma, alpha, neutrons, and betas, these are the emitters, they don't mingle, and they pulse energy. Think of how the sun shines. The sun doesn't shine like a spotlight. It shines in every direction. So the atoms that are floating around because of the man-made atoms will pulse energy. It could pulse at 100 feet every second. So as you're eating this, it's inside your body, and you are eating it. Because majority of nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Which, like, telling you this is probably, hopefully you understand why I'm censored so much. That'll give you an idea, because nobody's ever showed you this stuff. And so it's pulsing energy every second, and the stuff, it gets close to the ground, it just hangs there, pulsing energy, gammas, alpha, neutrons, betas, x-rays, in every direction, sterilizes the bacteria, the fungus, in your grass and your forests and your trees and your plants. It sterilizes the insects, the biota. It sterilizes all of it in increments at a steady pace for millions of years. Nothing will be able to come back. That's nuclear's ultimate legacy is going to be, and it's done through deception. Keep you in the dark till it's too late to do anything about it, and that's the point we've already hit. But now they don't want to have you pointing fingers. Now they don't want you looking for revenge. They don't want you looking to hold them accountable. And they're in a pretty good position to stop you too, because they control your universities. They infiltrated your universities, all your medias, all your major government agencies. The nuclear industry has infiltrated every facet of it. And they want to destroy all species. So United Nations is promoting genocide by invisible, because you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. Chalk River, which is the first nuclear meltdown that they admit to on the planet, was Canadian Chalk River, which pours right into the biggest aquifer. 23% of the fresh water on the planet is where this ends up pouring into, downriver from here to Great Lakes and everything else. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission will give 2 First Nations more time to weigh in on proposed facilities for storing nuclear waste in Chalk River, Ontario, Canada, roughly 180 kilometers northwest of Ottawa. And the move comes after local First Nations fought to delay a decision on a project, arguing the Commission had failed to consult with the Indigenous communities in the areas, which is 100% true. It'll hold 1 million tons of surface, a near-surface disposal every time it rains. For millions of years will be washed and liberated into the environment. 1 million tons of radioactive materials in a surface mount. So it's on the surface, and then they're going to put a mount over it. Because you can't get near it, see? They don't want to move it anywhere else. They want to come up with solutions. So 1 million tons is 2.2 billion pounds. At just a single place. Consider 1 million large 1-ton pickup trucks with a ton in the back of it. 1 million large pickup trucks with 1 ton of nuclear waste in the back of it. That'll poison everything and anything for the next million years. It's pulsing energy for millions of years. All of it. The whole, every facet of nuclear, when you start looking at nuclear, you're like, holy shit. There's evil and then there's nuclear, but evil got nothing on nuclear. Nuclear is its own type of evil. It's extinction machine. 90%, which is from Chalk River Laboratories. 90%. And owned by the Crown, the Canadian government's corporation known as Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. so they can go bankrupt and just leave the Canadians to deal with it. The proposed facility's proximity to the Ottawa River runs all the way down to the Atlantic seaboard, open ocean, through the St. Lawrence. It has to run through all of Ontario's drinking water for multiple millions of people, tens of millions of people on both sides, American and U.S. It raised alarms for environmentalists, community groups, First Nations, municipalities, but not medias. And the natives have no way of defending themselves against the propaganda unless they find someone like me to get them thinking properly. The West has forgotten how to build nuclear power plants. So has many countries. It's either Russia, North Korea, or South Korea, which is not really, don't have the manpower anymore, or France, which doesn't, like its current reactors that the French government is building in other countries, including their own, are disasters. They're actual disasters. Like every facet of it is a disaster. And these are disease factors as soon as you turn them on top of that. Congress is poised to shoot down Biden's nuclear rollback. The prime ministers or presidents of your country shakes hands, typically with lobbyists, gets their picture taken, and does whatever the lobbyist tells them. The military-industrial complex, which is NATO, which is 30 countries, militaries, that's how they list it. NATO is 30 militaries. United Nations is 195 militaries. That's the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower had tried to warn the world about. Moscow, Southern California Edison obfuscates to hide the risk of nuclear energy. That's a terrifying story, by the way. We got a poll tonight. UK Prime Minister Boris the Monster Johnson resigned today. And should the UK cancel Fukushima radioactive imports and dirty nuclear power plants, disease factories? Got 33 votes, 100%. Because usually when you talk about Britain, the British trolls will show up. They're actual gobblish. I love the British people. They're amazing. But the poor people of Britain, the government's trolls them constantly on social media, trolls them in their local medias and their local TVs and everything else. It's disgusting. The British universities don't really exist. They're just weapons of mass destruction. Southern California Edison, obfuscate is to be evasive, unclear, confusing, cloud, muddy, fog, blur, obscure, divert, complicate, and confound. Through deception, misrepresentation, deceit, and dishonesty. That's how the industry survives. They're like vampires where they live in the dark. And they're by nature evil. That's the only way you can really explain the nuclear industry. Which explains why California rightfully decided in 1976 to ban construction of new nuclear power plants. The state's last operating plant to build new ones nationwide is seriously misguided. The professor says the reason is nuclear power is the most expensive, the most unreliable, the most dangerous, and the most environmentally unfriendly form of energy production. It's the most expensive, unreliable, dangerous, and environmentally unfriendly form of energy, which is what we say constantly. I'll put that on the screen in case somebody wants a screen capture. Oh, where's the Geiger counter, Dana? I moved the camera closer to the Geiger counter. I'm using a fixed lens on it. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. And then I moved the light because it has its own dedicated light and its own dedicated camera. And the lens, you got to turn the autofocus off, or in my case, I'm using a fixed lens. And so the lens that I'm using for that, Rokon, that's the same lenses you get in a $5,000-$10,000 lens. Right? It's got the same ones, except it doesn't have a motor. But you have to manually focus, right? And do the aperture yourself, which is whatever, right? If it's fixed, like something like that. But you got to shine a light on it to get it. So that takes away from all that extra effort to put a lot of effort into it, because we had all kinds of different ways to try doing that over the years, and that works really well. But in his opening counter, Dobkin cited examples of new supporters for nuclear energy, like a Brazilian fashion model, which is Michael Schellenberg's little pet monster, Isodope. She got 4,900 followers as of today. So quoting her as the reasons for nuclear being good is insane. An advocacy group, which was started up by Schellenberg, another, he funded her, and he funded this group too. Generation Atomic. And they got other people, because when they start up these types of sites, they're supported by a whole range of well-known nuclear cranks, notorious nuclear cranks. And they're quoting United Nations, claiming 4.2 million premature deaths per year are linked to outdoor air pollution, much of it from fossil fuels. And United Nations, of course, promotes nuclear, right? So the only solution is nuclear, is what they're saying. But the 4.2 million premature deaths that showed up last year, I think it was. I got all kinds of varying numbers where it showed up. People just blew it right out of proportion. I'll show you the original for something to do, maybe, which was James Hansen. Scumbag James Hansen. What a strange creature he turned out to be, right? There we go. Hansen. What else am I missing? Okay, there you go. So the original quote was James Hansen. Him and his buddy done a paper. He's such a disgusting parasite, that creature. Between 1971 and 2009, 28-year period, 1.8 million air pollution caused deaths were prevented by nuclear, is what he's claiming. Which works out to 64,000 a year. 64,000 a year. But then it blew out of proportion. I'll show you some of that for a laugh. And the industry keeps blowing it even worse. Air pollution kills 5 million people each year, Dana. Hang on, I'll get back to where we left off. Right here. 6.5 million It went from 56,000 a year to 6.5 million a year, which is pure propaganda, by the way. An energy security group in Paris, and why would you trust Paris, France, after what they've done to the French Polynesian and Niger to get their cheap uranium? They destroyed a whole country. 3 million deaths each year from air pollutions. 5.5 million people worldwide killed by poor air pollution. 2016. 5 million people a year around the world every year. Because if you put your coal plants, oil, gas in the community, you would probably get those numbers. But most of them are not. If you stop doing it in the community, these people are 9 million people. 4.5 million every year. 10,000 a day, which is 3.6 million a year. 8.7 million dead globally because of fossil fuel. This is trying to demonize fossil fuel. But gas, oil, and coal emissions where are we to where? Gas, oil, and coal emissions only go about 50, 60 miles on a good day in hot temperatures with a bit of wind, maybe 100 miles. This is Fukushima radioactive fallout after 16 days when it stops, the model. This is 16 days. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't do that. The only thing that does that is nuclear. Pulsing energy every second, every atom. And the amount of atoms we're talking about, you can't actually write the number down because it's so much. It's 1 trillion times more than all the stars in the universe. Poor air quality kills 5.5. So they blew it right out of proportion. Look at that. Killing millions. But they can't quantify those assertions, by the way. Oh, that's the story. It goes back to there, back to here. That's where it ends. No, it doesn't end there. Oh yeah, that's where the original story ends right here. Being the second largest source of clean energy in the world, and historically the fastest to scale up. And the claim that you can scale up nuclear quickly, this is absurdness on a whole different scale, by the way. And that's what the industry does. It's incapable of being honest, not even for 3 seconds on top of that. They haven't got a single honest bone in their whole body. Do this again here for you. First, hang on. I got to go back to that. We forgot the one part. So, they blew it out of proportion and claimed that millions are dying every year. Right? But what's really going... Millions are dying every year from pollution, but it's from nuclear power plants. I'm going to show it to you what I mean by that. And future nuclear power plants will be doing the same thing. Okay, here we go. So, because... once again, gas, oil, and coal emissions don't cover the planet. This is Fukushima fallout after 16 days. Covers the entire planet. But almost all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. two future nuclear power plants, both of them surrounded by farms as far as you can see. This is genocide machine. Because all this food is shipped to market on a regular schedule. And then you've had the fallout worldwide because of the world is much different than most people give it credit for. Most people don't have a concept of how the world works, which is probably a good thing. Bless your hearts, you're lucky. So, in 2020, renewables was equal to 300 nuclear power plants. 261 gigawatts came online in 12 months. Last year was 291 gigawatts. In 2020, 300 nuclear power plants, large ones, worth of renewables came online. So those who argue we must construct more nuclear plants to beat the climate emergency are clearly wrong. But to claim that it's the fastest to scale up on top of that, getting their way and destroying the planet by deception, for deception. This sack of shit, this disgusting parasite, this incredible betrayal from this creature has been used to bludgeon humanity for 30-something years now with his 15-minute PowerPoint. And then back to the Brazilian fashion model, the advocacy group, all of these created by Michael Schellenberg's shell companies. He also points to an online poll. So they had a fictional online poll showing an increase in support for nuclear energy. Like 3 straw man arguments in a row. When there's other arguments you probably could have used. But they chose to use pure deception, deceit. Omitted, for example, is the blockbuster joint statement issued in January this year by nuclear authorities from the United States, from France, Germany, Great Britain, detailing strong opposition to any expansion of nuclear power as a strategy to combat climate change. Wind and solar, by the way, just produced more electricity than nuclear for the first time in the United States. In April alone, renewables accounted for 29.3% of energy in the United States. But nuclear is throttling it, see? Combination of just wind and solar. It should be geothermal and tidal energy backed up by wind and solar, which is all backed up by storage with compressed air storage. We dig big mine shafts and compress air down there. And if you have the resources, you can have pumped hydro. It's important for people who are not aware to hear what this man, Patrick Clausen from the Washington Institute, it's a military-industrial complex think tank. He's going to describe previous wars and how they started the war in order to get into the wars. And at the end of it, he's going to say it's very hard to see how this president can get us to war with Iran, so it would be best if somebody else started the war. So attack America and blame it on Iran, just like we've done throughout history.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the USS, until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
So it would be best if somebody, and you know how they do that, obviously? They attack football event or parade or a marathon and blame it on people from a country you don't like in that case Iran. If you listen to the whole interview one day, they give you many more examples. This was a condensed version, and then I slipped in the depictions, so you can have there's the depictions of each one I threw in there. That was actually a lot of work to hunt it all down that would actually tell the story properly. Oh, look at this. Boris the Monster Johnson resigns, and all of a sudden Sizewell C is put on a back burner. By the way, we're going to poll for that there tonight, don't we? Where's the poll to? How are we doing? We got 40 votes. Wow. Somebody just voted no, that they shouldn't cancel Fukushima radioactive food imports and dirty nuclear power plants. Can you imagine how pathetic you are to vote no for that? Can you imagine what kind of weirdo you must be to vote no for that poll? Imagine how stupid you actually are. Imagine how pathetic you gotta be to vote no. Imagine how freaking stupid, though, you gotta be to vote no. It's like, what an idiot. They show up on my site sometimes, but the majority of people on my site are good people who has good intentions and are sick of the deceit and dishonesty. Decision on Sizewell C nuclear power station. And Sizewell C, of course, and they show you, the first picture, they show you that one, but two more pictures, and they show you surrounded by farms and estuaries and protected areas right on the ocean. How can you build a nuclear power plant? That's a future one. How can you build it in farmland? How do you get that evil? Because the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation all day long. They're still splitting the atom. There's no containment. That's what the tall, skinny stacks at the nuclear plants are for. It's so evil. It just seems like it's... I can understand that people can't believe it's real, but I provide the documentation, and I went through I go through a sick amount of work to try to cover every argument that they give you. But then you got to be able to find it on the drop of a hat all the time. I'm pretty good at it because I'm at this 5 days a week for years, right? But if I shut down for a week, I lose a lot of that momentum. It takes a few days to pick it back, all the little nuances back up again, the minutiae, the details. Now they got a delay of just the 20th of July. They were supposed to do it right away, right? To ensure there's sufficient time to allow the Secretary of State to consider the proposal. Whoever that may be, are they going to step down too? It was built on a mini-smear nature reserve, endangering more than 6,000 species, and surrounded by farmland on top of that. Idaho National Laboratory has polluted the aquifer. It's one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country. Freshwater drinking water supply is completely polluted. And they got something like $98 million. They're going to clean it up. You can't clean up an aquifer. You're not going to go down there with a diving bell and decompression divers and saturated divers and pick up the nuclear fuel and fix everything. To talk about micro-nuclear reactors, the micro-nuclear reactors, of course, And Idaho National Laboratory has 900 people on cancer disability, another 900 waiting to get cancer disabilities, and 900 people with cancer turned down for benefits. It's a big disease factory. So imagine the communities anywhere within the couple of 100-mile radius of these disease factories. The micro-nuclear reactors, they produce 35% more intermediate level waste. You don't want that near your property, trust me. It produces 30 times more high level waste, and it produces 5 times more fuel rods than a conventional reactor because it's inefficient. And in order to get any efficiency out of it, they have to use mixed oxide fuel, which is crimes against humanity just to make it. By the way, they got a 600 energy efficient fleet of vehicles. 600 vehicles that are considered energy efficient. That's a huge site on top of that. I can't remember the square mileage. It's a couple of hundred square miles. They got 600 fuel efficient fleet of vehicles. 600. 600. When you look at the nuclear industry and you add it up worldwide, the whole story is absurd. So 600 times $40,000 a pop. Let's say $40,000 a pop. That's $24 million worth of cars. They're just greedy people on top of that. They have no redeeming qualities that we've noticed over the years. And its other efforts include a focus on nuclear energy. It's polluted everything in that part of the country already on top of that, and there's no end in sight. Duke Energy is going to be testing sirens next Wednesday around Brunswick nuclear plant. Testing sirens around a disease factory. And these rivers, you go downstream, because it used to be downriver, right? Downstream. These were the victims, like the Tetra River in the former Soviet Union, currently now Russia. And so they got rid of the word downriver and called it downwind. But everything is downwind. The wind blows different directions every single couple of days at most, right? Mountains and valleys and fjords and prairies, all of this changed the micro climates, right? So they call it something downwind from an emission source of pollution is ludicrous. It has to be that you have to go square mileage. Within a 700 square mileage of the disease factories is a no-go zone. It doesn't stop there, by the way. 38 sirens within 10 miles. If you can hear the sirens, you're living in a danger zone. You're constantly in radioactive fallout zone. Minimum you want to live to these disease factories is 100 miles. 38 sirens. They were put there by activists. And then there was no checks and balances, so the industry now turned that into a circus. Israel told France at the Paris talks that the world must respond to Iran. The world. Got to take Israel's word for it. Who created 5 million Palestinian refugees. They had no problem keeping 5 million Palestinian refugees out, but they can't contain the 10,000 Hamas. Or even capture or kill one of them. But they can use them to vilify and demonize, marginalize the children left behind, can't they? U.S.-China is in a heated microwave race for weapons. These are EMP, electronic pulse weapons, where they take out the capacitors and the circuits of your circuit boards and your electronic equipment. They can fly over a city and kill everything in the city with it. A flying weapon of mass destruction. So if everybody's exiting a major city, they can just fly over and kill all the vehicles, electronics. Just follow the highway. And they do it. These are self-guided. These are like missiles, right? But they come back to base and land. Pyongyang relies primarily on aging Soviet artillery that are unaffected by high-powered microwave blasts, where every other country's military would be shut down, right? That's a weapon of mass destruction right there. That absolutely shouldn't even exist anywhere on the planet. It's literally the stupidest thing you could have done was created stuff like that. You know, during one of the great wars, what was great about it again, Dana? No, that's right, nothing. Great amount of stupid. The Americans had invented a gas that would give everybody diarrhea, or a majority of the people diarrhea, right? And they didn't use it because if you got diarrhea, you can't run away. You're going to stay there and fight till the death. And so they didn't use it. And that's the same thing with this stuff. They shouldn't be using it. It's the diarrhea of their planet Earth. Boeing, the weapons of mass destruction, the misery machine known as Boeing, posted a video showing a simulated missile. Hang on here. My voice has been doing okay up to now, eh? That's because I've been hitting it with tea. Yeah, up a little notch today now. And demonstrating how it works, Boeing posted a video showing a simulated missile flying over selected targets, hitting them with targeted high-power radio wave bursts, defeating their electronics and data systems without causing injury or collateral damage. I wonder who they're using that against, who they're testing that stuff against. The Israelis used Palestinians to test out their weapons. Who's the Americans going to be using? I wonder. Iran. Last year, the South China Morning Post reported China has developed a hypersonic weapon capable of generating an intense electromagnetic pulse, EMP, capable of wiping out communications and power lines within 2-kilometer radius. So you don't have to get close to the generating station, just within 2 miles. They can flatten it. So they can flatten the whole military convoy and then come in and slaughter it. And Biden will be remembered for wrecking the country. Biden will be remembered for... Oh, we got a spammer showed up in our poll, I see. 15% says no, they shouldn't cancel Fukushima and deadly radioactive food from a nuclear wasteland imports or dirty disease factories known as nuclear power plants. So look at that. Right out of the blue, we went from 100% to all of a sudden in 10 minutes, 15% says no. 100% said yes 15 minutes ago. And in the first hour, and then in a 15-minute period, the stupid, idiot, boring nuclear industries come in and spammed us. That's amazing that somebody would actually go through all that effort just to get 80%. Imagine how pathetic those are. Imagine how pathetic you got to be to do something like that. That's the nuclear industry, see? So, nuclear leak, worry not, says the Navy. The very last people on your planet that you want to trust is the militaries, the Navy, the Air Force, or any of them. There's zero possibility. Their job is to lie to you. And they're professional genocide machines. They got 13 nuclear subs there at Plymouth. The Royal Navy. Calling these people royal is another, just meant to make them complacent themselves. See? No reason to fear a radiation leak from 13 submarines, nuclear submarines. Oh yeah, that came because they had a nuclear siren that went off on Monday, and everybody in the community panicked, which is what you're supposed to do. See, that's what a siren's for. So you can panic and run away. They panicked, but they weren't smart enough to run away. They're like, is it real? Is it real? Because they hear it all the time. And so when they finally have an accident, they just showed us they're not going to run away, right? Yeah? That's what I mean, right? Become complacent. So they panicked. They were calling, texting, tweeting, posting audio and little clips all over social media going, like, what's going on? The siren's going on. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to run away. And you failed. Plymouth is proud to host, that was the mayor, I think, the Royal Navy's largest disease factory. Submarines awaiting defueling, full of reactor cores. They haven't decommissioned a single one there, all these years, all these decades. If the nuclear siren goes off outside the weekly test, you have to assume it's real and radiation has been released from the dockyards. And then the reason the siren goes off is so you can run away. But you got to figure which way the wind's blowing, where the plant is to. You got to know it all the time. They do tests every week. They're coming in and spamming us hard. Now they're up to 21% on the spam bots. Look at that. It's not spam bots. This is people actually spamming us from the nuclear industry in desperation. Like I said, whenever you talk about the British, they're the British useful idiots. They're the ones that'll do this, for sure. This is British doing that. United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigned in humiliation. So a couple of days ago, they opened the gates on disease food from Japan. So should the UK cancel the Fukushima radioactive disease food imports and dirty nuclear plants? Well, the answer obviously is yes. Look at this, we're up to 25% now. Wow. They're gone into spamming mode. Holy. They're up to 24% that fast. Around 15 minutes ago, they were 0 no's. And in the last couple of minutes now, they got 25%. They're going for it. Can you imagine how pathetic you actually are to do that? And because it doesn't matter because we caught them at it, right? So anybody's watching this, they're not going to be influenced. They're going to say, look at the panic in the nuclear industry. Look how pathetic the nuclear industry actually is doing something like that. Look how silly and retarded and idiotic the nuclear industry is. They're doing something like that. Look how gross the nuclear industry is actually doing something like that. 26%. They're spamming me in real time. No votes. Look at that. What's the point, though? Hello, stupid. Where you to? Call me. 709-589-4406. Got to put a 1 in front of that for Canada. It's 709-589-4406. You don't need to spam me. Just call me. Let's have a debate. Or do cowards call, people? 27%. So they're gone in the idiot mode. Holy shit. Let's hang out for a few minutes and watch the desperation and the panic of the nuclear industry. Oh, somebody's having a poll. Let's call out the army to spam them. Nuclear geeks their parents now are banging on the floor. Come upstairs, the nuclear industry just called. He wants you to spam Dana. Nuclear physicists now are climbing the stairs from basements of their mothers' homes all around the world to spam Dana with their YouTube accounts about. Come on, give us one more. You're not going to give up. And I already got to get up to 28%. Just imagine, though, how pathetic you got to be to do what they're doing. The whole story is absurd. It's just absurd. So they spam me basically with 15 accounts in a 15-minute period. You're amazing. The nuclear industry should give you guys a raise. You're so wonderful. You're such a asset for the nuclear industry. Yeah, just when you think you've seen it all, another nuclear idiot shows up and proves that they got another trick up their sleeve. In February, it was revealed the first nuclear submarine in Devonport dockyard is to be recycled. The very first one after decades of sitting around irradiating everything. Yeah, Arnie or Helen should call in. Yeah, thank you, everybody. We got Kevin Blanche. Let's give Kevin a call, see how Kevin's doing. I know Kevin is, because this is the last show of the week. If we don't call him today, then he was supposed to call me when he got out on research expedition. You out there, Kevin? I'm calling. Pick up the phone, Kevin, when I call. He's got my name in there. Hopefully he'll see me. I gotta look for him, though. Oh, Kevin B. Kevin. And let's give Kevin a call. Get an update for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes from Kevin. Hey, Kevin. How you doing, my friend?
Good.
I got you on the show already. I'm not gonna ask you. Too late. You're already on it. Hey, where are you to and what are you doing, Kevin? Can you give us an update?
Well, I'm not in California yet. I'm waiting on this moon, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
On the moon.
Yeah, right. My apologies.
So I'm leaving on Sunday, but
awesome. Can't wait, man. It's gonna be fantastic.
But you're on it. You want to get the trolls going. Just London Liz. You say anything about the hierarchy in the UK, they cry like little bitches they are. Oh, they'll go crazy. I've learned my lesson over the years. You say one thing about other London.
Yeah, they are. That's a fact. You're breaking up. You're breaking up, Kevin. Go ahead.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
You there?
Yeah. No, I think it's just you had the phone away from your mouth or something.
Yeah, so...
That's perfect. Go ahead.
A lot of the trolls, because I did a lot of work on this early when they were really going after us, in 2015, 14, 16. And I got the FBI involved. I got a lot of people involved because I was incredible when they were attacking. A lot of the trolls trace right to London in England. A lot of them. We traced them right down. Who they were, we got names and how it works. And so, it's the same old players. So just like your poll tonight, anything that pops up into their bot system that says anything about Boris or about London Liz or about anything, they have, these bots, certain words and language pop into them, and they go to work. And they have multiple accounts, and they just sit and spam. And they're low life. In the old days, we used to call them telephone tough guys, remember? They call you up and they're going to kick your ass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, come
Yeah,
on over and let's meet up. They never do. That's who the killers are.
Yeah, no, like Dave attack. I've seen him attack you relentless for extended periods, and
Shit they did to me when I was in critical condition. I mean, they were attacking me when I was in ICU unit.
that's right. Yeah, they were. When you couldn't defend yourself, they were the most brave, right?
Yeah, that's when, I mean, you name it. And by the way, felonies in all 50 states because I was in critical condition, but that don't matter to anti-nukers. The nuclear industry, I call the untouchables. What they're able to get away with is staggering, mind-boggling to me. They're above the law. There's no laws to these people. They just do whatever the hell they want, whenever they want. And there's two sets of rules, theirs and the rest of the world's. And so, you know, you say one, you know, your tag on your videos has Boris in there. They're class clown. You know, they're dumbass puppet. And so, you know, the trolls, they see the spam, the certain words come up, and
so like I mean they had major events many times, but the Sellafield nuclear meltdown, that thing is still melting down. Kevin, are you up to speed on that one?
Oh yeah, big time. So I'll tell you a great story about Sellafield. A lot of people don't know this. That Paul McCartney and John Lennon. John Lennon was a hardcore anti-nuclear activist.
Wow.
He's anti-nuclear energy, and so, that's what split him up. So, Let It Be. The song Let It Be, that's about Sellafield? So, McCartney's mother lived right there. Not long after the meltdown, she got cancer, and she died young.
And he figured it out.
And Lennon was all over. He was anti-nuclear, and then McCartney wrote that panty painter sissy song, Mother Mary Came to Me, said, let it be, want revolution. But that's what they split them up. People forget that John Lennon was a fierce anti-nuclear.
Wow.
And Sir Paul was a pro, that's why he's Sir. So that all goes back to Sellafield. Sellafield, people in the UK resisted in a big way on nuclear energy and, how it works over there. That's where Canada learned it. They just railroaded it right back down their throat. So it's a major subject in the UK to this day. Like you said, after Chernobyl, they shut down all those bombs. And, it was a big deal then. But we know who runs the show over there. London lives in a uranium mine. And so, the stuff always traces to the same small group of power freaks. And right to the royal family. And dumb bastards over there don't know any different.
Yeah, they launched a huge campaign after Fukushima too, to downplay it from the United Kingdom.
Yeah,
that's still ongoing, I would say. Go ahead, Kevin.
So the whole thing with the whole propaganda machine, and this has been breaking loose, and you and I need to be talking about this more. That it's breaking loose now. That the teams of trolls were paid. All kinds of this industry was paid. They had sophisticated anything Fukushima they were trolling and going after. Well, who's really the only two Fukushima truthers out there?
Yeah, really.
You and I.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So they were going after us illegally, paid entire teams of trolls, talk about David, and we have no recourse? And they get away with that?
Yeah,
and by the way, you were in a wheelchair for a while. I was in critical condition and a bone marrow transplant. They're full of leukemia.
Oh, they were savaged on me. They used to come in and say, "You're not going to believe a guy in a wheelchair, are you?" And so, like this contempt for people that have got injured. I got injured as a commercial diver, diving on the ocean floor, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I got the bends, right? And they actually try to use that as justification to say that, well, he's in a wheelchair. He can't possibly be very smart. I mean, my God, right?
We have these really serious laws, especially here in the United States, and Canada does too. It's against the law to freaking do something to things that they did against people like us.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, I'm a predicament. Those are felonies, but the FBI wouldn't do anything to them. They let us. I had guns in my face. They had people wound up. People used to call me on that Connecting the Dots fool, that other idiot, that Forbid TV idiot. There's like 7 or 8 different sites. They had a Facebook page. It was called the Post-Ignorant Scammers.
Right,
And there was this Japanese guy from thing, and he ran it. And my name everywhere. And they physically winding people up to where I was in California, and this dude come right up to me. Says, you get up there and put a gun right in my face.
Wow.
This is, and you know, I'm like, dude, I'll take that gun away from you and make you piss your pants, you know.
Yeah.
But if they get away with it, this spamming and trolling, and YouTube claims they're going to freaking quit. Well, who does YouTube? They attack us. I mean, look at our view count.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, no, it's terrible what they're doing. That certainly demonstrates the cowardness of them. It's just basically me and you that are consistent, and so they freak out that if we're going to have a video or anything, they actually freak out about it.
Think about how many resources they've thrown at you and I, two grassrooters.
Yeah.
The old man, the old Dr. Burroughs told me.
They threw the book at you many times, yeah.
He says it just proves how effective you've been. And they're that afraid of you. And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty pathetic. You know,
I guess somebody calling from New York, they'll call in after. Because I was attacked from New York for a long time. I used to get all these calls from New York. But there was another call that used to come in from payphones in New York. And every time I would answer the phone from the payphone calls, because I would track the number after, right? Those calls were always scrambled. You couldn't understand what they were saying. They were always short calls, 25 or 30 seconds, and then they would hang up. These were from payphones, eh? And it was always scrambled, and then it finally stopped, unfortunately. And I used to tell them, go.
One day, there was one of the spammers. We had a group about 15 of them. We tracked down their names and found them. One of them lived in North County, San Diego. He used to have this YouTube site called Double Hoops. So I tracked the motherfucker down. I'm like, and so I did some forensic work. I found his name, his address, I went right to the fucker's house.
Awesome.
And I knocked on the fucking door. Fucker in there pissed his pants and had a fucking heart attack.
That's so awesome.
You pick me again, you know. And so then there's another one that was in L.A. that they were paying, and he had the spammers, and I kept watching him, following him. Guess what he got arrested and put in prison for?
What?
Sex with an 11-year-old.
Wow. Yeah.
Headline story in L.A. So these are the creeps that they find. These are these loser punks.
No, that's a good point, actually.
They find these 2-bit pieces of shit, and they give them some chump change, and they give them some money, and they do their dirty work, and then they just hide behind it. It's the nuclear industry. It's the NEI. The NEI is a division of the Department of Energy. You know, they came right out and said, they said in 2014 we were going to spend many, many more times money into squashing down the Fukushima dynamic and promoting more nuclear energy. They say it all the time. You know, they're public out in front about it. And it's against the law what they're doing.
It works. It works because there's only me and you basically left. There's a couple, right?
Don't believe anything.
Organic Slant.
That are here in Utah.
There's just a handful of people that are trying, but we're consistent. We're consistent. We're capable. Me and you could both beat them in a debate any day of the week, no problem. And that's probably what's that freaks them out, I think. And you got folks. People don't understand, you know, what Kevin's saying. There was a story come out I covered a number of years ago. I used to cover it regularly just to bring it back into the conversation. Was Taiwan had 2,000 nuclear students. Every day would spam the internet with propaganda about Fukushima to downplay it. 2,000 students. How many other countries were doing that, see?
And we know the U.S. is doing it. That's
Right.
been proven.
Yeah.
And now it's come out in the Biden bailout bill and the Trump stimulus bill that was several $1 million in each bill for social influencers to promote salmon, for social influencers to promote salmon and to attack the anti-nuclear energy crowd, it says. And that's been reported now.
Well, most the anti-nuclear doesn't appreciate the full depth of what the issue
Well, there
is.
is no anti-nuclear movement. You and I are it. The anti-nuclear energy movement consists basically of two people.
Yeah.
You and I.
Oh, I know, man.
Busby, all those pieces of shit. Kevin Camp, I know all these people. They're all oppositional resistance.
Yeah.
They all show their colors.
They're
in Fukushima.
control
They're not
opposition.
anti-nuclears.
That's right, folks. There's control opposition out there, folks. And Kevin Camp, Beyond Nuclear, is a prime example. Ernie Gunnarsson, Helen Caldicott, Christopher Busby.
I know Ernie personally. I know Caldicott personally. I know Kevin Camp personally. I know every one of these people. I've had conversations. They'll tell you straight up, they're not anti-nuclear. Helen Caldicott's own ex-husband told me he calls her a second-hand movie star. She's there to sell books. She's made a lot of money.
A second-hand movie star.
Yeah, he calls her that. So she is, and so they showed their colors with Fukushima. Busby was in my sight every day. First day that Fukushima happened, I knew these were meltdowns, and I'm reporting this meltdown. He's in my sight leaving comments every day. No, you Kevin, you're wrong. These are hydrogen blasts, blah, 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 blah. I finally had to block him after about day 90. I've always known what a fraud. He got hired by Hill. I was one of the original founders of Hill of Utah. And when I was in the hospital, we had a litigation case going at Blue Castle. They hired freaking Gundershill. And I told Matt, are you crazy? This guy works for the nuclear industry. You just lost the case, I can guarantee you. And
Yeah.
sure as shit, he got us on the stand, and we was all pro-nuclear.
Oh, it's amazing how actually evil they are. Right?
I'll tell you a story about Gundershill. I've never told nobody this.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Here's a big story about Gundershill. So, Jan, Miss Milky the Clown, and Ride Chick
Yeah.
were both doing reporting. They're both from Michigan. They didn't know that they lived 5 miles away from each other. I hooked them up with each other. So I introduced them to each other. I got them together. So they'd go to their local, in Michigan, they'd go to their local library every Friday and dig through archives trying to find paperwork. Well, sure as shit, Jan finds some paperwork on Gundershill on a case on Fermi, some old work that he was representing the nuclear industry. So Jan called him on it. She called him on the phone. She called Fairwind. And he said, well, I just happened to be in the region. I'm doing work for Rad. So anyway, he didn't know that Radchick was with her. So he comes over to go to lunch with her or whatever. Radchick's kind of lurking. So Radchick followed him. And he went around the corner, and she showed him this paperwork they thrown out. Can I have it? Can I have it? And she's like, no, you can't have it. No, can I take pictures of it? So he didn't know who Radchick was. So Radchick kind of just followed him, and she just kind of trailed him like a good detective. And she got over by him, and she got next to him, and he made a call to somebody. And she recorded the call, and he was talking to somebody in the nuclear industry, checking that it had, and she pinned his ass down. So Radchick, she's like, that's you. She put her online. And so she proved that he works for the nuclear industry. Proved it.
Well, his wife was a spokesperson for the nuclear industry for 20 years.
Yeah, she was the lead spokesman for the NEA.
Yeah, the spokesperson. Yeah.
The spokesperson. And that, same with Busby. Busby said that, Busby was sending me these emails when I was in the bone marrow transplant, all capital letters, and I tracked him down, just viciously, verbally telling me he's going to kick my ass. Right? He wrote a song about me. This is when I was in critical condition.
Wow.
And then, of course, Helen, I was in New York at her academy symposium, and I talked to Helen face to face. And she told me I couldn't use the F, but she says, no, Kevin, we can't talk Fukushima, blah, blah. I says, I'm a butcher with a cow. Really, Helen? And she was, Helen's made a lot of money at this gig. Helen's a multi-millionaire being a fake anti-nuclear.
Yeah, 14 books. 14 fake books, yeah.
And same with Kevin Camps. I knew John Hurley when I was in D.C. I spent so much time. Kevin Camps told me to my face I asked him about that. He says, well, Kevin, I'm not an anti-nuclear. I says, oh, you bring on nuclear? You say you are? He told me he was an abolitionist. I says, if you're an abolitionist, I'm a unicorn. But anyway, John Hurley told me that him and his wife is a lobbyist. Kevin Camp's wife is a lobbyist, a lawyer in the Beltway. He says, you go to any pro-muck parties in the Beltway, they're always there. He says, Beyond Nuclear pays themselves each about $500,000 a year. And he says, they get funding right out of the nuclear industry. And that's coming from John Hurley himself, head of the National Press Corps, told me that. You know, so, that dude don't lie. That dude was one of the most honest people in the world. So that's how they've handled it. They've had carte blanche. They've had no resistance, like you say. So we take them on. They don't know how to act when we take them on. So, you know, they call the 7th grade hall monitors. They cry to mommy. They do all this stuff that, you know, your 7th grade, 8th grade punks would do. Because they don't know how to fight us.
It's childlike.
Sure, they debate us.
It's not childish, it's childlike, right?
But it's not even childlike. It's coward, weakling, scumbaggery.
Yeah.
None of them will ever. I've lots of them. I'm like, well, let's just have it open. And I'm very cordial. I mean, I've done lots of debating, you know, as a professor for years and years, and people know it. They will not. They will never, ever. It's like, you know, they'll call the cops, they'll call the police, they'll call Google, they'll call everybody, you know, and make up stories, make up lies, do anything they can to try to discredit it.
There's not a single one of them that I wouldn't love to waterboard a couple of hundred times.
Yeah, well, they're punks, but they will never, ever confront you face to face. None of them, ever. Like the professors I know that are pro-nuclear, they see me at the university, they put their head down almost between their legs and turn and walk like a little freaking awkward, you know.
Yeah, they try to pretend that they don't exist, and that's a typical manifestation of cowardness, you know.
No, they won't have a debate with you. They won't even have a cordial conversation, you know. In fact, I told the NRC, you know, I know Allison McFarland personality. Look, we can sit down and have a beer and have it. I'll even buy. I'll buy because we always buy. You know, let's just have a beer. They won't. Yep. They won't. They're afraid. They're cowards. They know deep down in their soul and their hearts what they're doing is evil and poison the planet. They make a lot of money doing it.
Do you know what Ernie Gunnarson's father used to do by chance?
No.
I would love to know stuff like that, eh? I
don't know his line. I could figure it out, but I know a lot of the other ones' lines. I know right where they're like Bezos. Bezos' grandfather is Geist. Just look him up. His mother was 14 years old when she was pregnant. The father got charged with statutory rape. His dad is Los Alamos. His grandfather is Geist himself, the original NRC. That's him. Same with Bill Gates' line. Bill Gates' line, look up his father, his grandfather. Gates is not their real last name. Bezos' last name's not real last. That was Bezos, the Bay of Pigs, CIA guy, adopted him. Those guys come right out of the nuclear car, and it's like you said, it's bloodlines that have been going on for years in this cartel. Same with Elon Musk. Go check out Elon Musk's mom and dad in his real line. People knew his past. That's a racist, sicko freak. Bezos is, and you know, all the .coms go broke, not Bezos. I tell people just Google who his grandfather is, his mother's dad. Same with Epstein. You go to Epstein Island, Epstein Ranch was at Los Alamos. That's a coincidence. Bill Gates met with Epstein. You know, all these people that are in the nuclear clan, it's all the same clan. It's all the same clan.
Yeah, it's a really, like, I showed a clip earlier of how they got into most of the recent last 100-year wars where they attacked themselves and blamed it on the country they want to go to war against.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this litany of cowardness has been around a very long time. That's pure evil.
And it's bloodline. You know, their fathers did it, their fathers did it, their fathers did it.
And that's right. Right, and they actually go to university to get an education, to get the job, to tell the lie.
Well, you know who was the best, who went at them harder than anyone? Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a peace activist. Albert Einstein went to the same school with all these people. Was in the split. He rejected them all. He called them every name in the book. Yeah. Einstein, you know, went off on nuclear harder than anyone. Says the biggest joke he ever seen. And he He said these guys are all bloodline clique, and they're evil, wanting to poison the planet.
And Robert Oppenheimer turned against him too, right?
He was always, they made him do that. You know, Oppenheimer's brother.
They tortured him, yeah. Go ahead.
Brother, I talked to him personally several times in Berkeley when I was a young guy. He was still around. But you know why Los Alamos is in New Mexico? When they went to J. Robert Oppenheimer's parents had a summer home there, and he used to like to ride sports and camp there. He told them, "Oh, hell no, I'm not participating in this freak show. There's no way." And they said, "We're not asking, we're telling," because they were going to do it at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And he says, "No, I'm not leaving here. I'm staying here with my horse at the cabin." He says, "Okay, then we'll bring it to you." That's how it ended up at Los Alamos, because he refused to leave. And he wasn't asked to run the Manhattan Project. He was told to run it. And then Leo the Lizard wrote that letter Leo died in La Jolla, but Leo Salazar wrote that letter to FDR, and he took him 3 days to talk Einstein into stand in that letter, saying that Hitler had it. And Einstein said at the end of his life, "It's the biggest mistake I ever had."
Wow.
He never had it. He says they opened up the spigot. They opened up the Manhattan Project spigot with this money. It's called Price-Anderson. They never shut it off. It's free money. It's free money by billions and billions. These people make so much money. This industry is so flush.
It's a license to print money for sure, right? Yeah.
Oh, those nuclear physicists at Livermore make $1.5 million a year, tax-free. This is the kind of money they deal with, and it's all taxpayer-free money. You know, Einstein said, so they were talking in code, does Hitler have it? Does Hitler have the bomb? You know, and they tried to convince Hitler ain't got it. Hitler's not even interested in it. They don't have it. So they talk in code. So the famous line comes down. He says, "Baby not born, mother never pregnant." They never had it. It was just a big blue job. And by the way, it's Tsar Bomba, like Tsar.
Yeah.
Tsar.
Yeah.
And so that's Andrei Sukhanov. He turned on him. He built that bomb. He won a Nobel Prize. A real Nobel Prize for peace. He was a hard anti-nuclear. He built that bomb.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm going to take Enrico Fermi, and I'm going to put a bullseye on his head, and I'm going to sell them on my website to people that want to target practice, right?
You know who Enrico Fermi looks exactly like, and I tell people I really think, and people think I'm crazy. Pull up a picture of Jeff Bezos and Enrico Fermi.
Oh, is that right?
Those people look exactly alike.
Wow.
And I always say that's probably his real father.
He does so look like Jeff Bezos. Look at that.
Oh, it's amazing. I've said for years when I was
Wow.
a young kid, probably his real father. But Enrico Fermi, when they dropped Trinity, they all bet $1 each other in New Mexico.
Right.
You know Enrico Fermi?
Yeah.
He bet $1 that it would kill everyone in New Mexico. And they did it anyway. That's how evil.
That's right, yeah. And I remember that because they'd done this at a university, the first chain reaction under the stands of the...
Chicago.
Right, I got a picture of it up there right now, that first one. And he had his assistant shove the fuel rod in. And he didn't know, right? They said, well, we could melt down the whole university. And he went ahead and done it anyway.
Right.
And they did have, right?
Unbelievable. Fermi died at 51 years old in La Jolla. So I grew up here and in La Jolla, and my grandfather was a Mormon socialist. He was a connected dude. Abe Hunsaker the Fourth, my grandfather. So all these muck-mucks were in La Jolla. So I knew a lot of them, and that's where they all were, and they all died. And, my grandfather despised them. He said, these people, this whole nuclear scam, because I was I was a gifted young guy, and I was going to honor student. And I'm like, I'm going to go to Caltech. He says, oh, no, you're not. Nope, you're going to a public school, boy. You're
Wow.
not going to, he says, these people are evil. One day you'll realize, and let me tell you, these people that run the whole nuclear industry, they got control of this country, and they are evil. That dude knew his shit. And that was right there in La Jolla where they all lived. And scumbags. And Fermi was one of the king scumbags. Him and Teller. I pissed on Teller's grave. I really did it.
You're my hero, buddy. I can think of quite a few of them. I want to go piss on their graves, that's for sure.
I did it.
We should have a national day where we all go piss on these people's graves.
Yeah.
each year.
You know, Oppenheimer took the fall. He was an anti-nuclear. He didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
And, you know,
that's
and
true.
he
It's true,
had to get-
folks. Yeah.
Tippett was a scumbag.
They
He,
prosecuted
you know,
him too, right? They tortured Oppenheimer. They spied on him. They followed him everywhere. They ostracized him.
Shit out of him.
Yeah, they tortured that guy.
Why do you think? How do you think they learned to slander you and I? It goes clear back to the Manhattan Project when they slandered the shit out of Oppenheimer. When they covered up Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, to this day, we've still never seen that real footage.
That color footage, yeah, they took that from the reporters. Because the color footage is a lot different, scarier than the black and white.
And it's out there.
It's
On
yeah.
the 75th anniversary, there was some that was put out by Russia, of all people, and you're like, whoa, this isn't what we got to see. But to this day, we haven't seen the carnage. So they've been covering up this nightmare. They learned that since 1945. And they've covered up every nuclear accident. When Fukushima happened, they're like, oh, shit, there was a live cam. It was on CNN. It blew up. What do we do? Hurry, call Gunderstill. Call Busby. Call freaking Helen. Get them on
exactly.
TV.
They were on it. They would have been on it right away, too. I mean, they're going to volunteer to go out and try to trick and deceive and manipulate the narrative.
Well, I got to tell you this one story, too. You know, I know Lake Barrett personally. And Lake Barrett, you know, he covered up 3 Mile Line. Lake Barrett's running the show.
I despise Lake Barrett. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. He's the biggest scumbag. But get this, that sunflower that's in my yard, Mark, who used to watch your show, is his maintenance guy. So Mark calls me one day right from his yard. He's getting his house ready in Florida for a hurricane. He says, Kevin, I got Lake on the phone. I've been talking to him about you for, you know, months and months. So get him on the phone. I said, bring him on. So he got him on the phone on three-way, and I'm like, hi, Lake. And he's like, oh, hi, Kevin. And I'm like, so Mark says, well, Blanche says these are full-blown-out meltdowns, and they're being pushed into the Pacific Ocean. You've got no control on these things. And this is in the early days. This is like in 2013 and 2012. And Lake Barrett says, well, Blanche is right. And I said, well, Lake, that's not what you said on TV. You know what he said? Had to tell him something. That's exactly what he said. I'll testify to that.
Yeah, and Lake, go ahead, yeah.
So they're paid liars, and they're paid to lie by the United States Department of Energy, and you can look up the bill. It's called Price-Anderson.
Yeah, that's right.
It passed, I believe, 53 or 50, and it's called the Immunity Act, and it pertains to the nuclear industry. So any money they get, anything they do,
It's protected.
they all know this.
Yeah.
Any crime they commit, Karen Silkwood. I mean, any of these people they
Yeah.
go for, if they came up and freaking killed you or I, got us one up, I doubt there'd even be a police investigation.
No, that's right, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're such cowards, they'll just poison me to get rid of me at some point.
The thing is, here's where they screwed up. I was so venomous in the early days, and I was so intense, and the YouTube was wild, and I had so many millions and millions of views. But by the time they circled the wagons on us, it was too late. They know it. So our toothpaste got out of the tube, lightning got out of the bottle, so they're like, well, what do we do? So, you know, get rid of him. They're not about to martyr one of us. If you or I was killed, you know what that would do to the nuclear industry?
Oh, yeah.
People would revolt like no other.
Well, when they convicted me, uranium stocks flatlined the very next day. It was probably just a coincidence, but...
Daily Metal wanted to interview you, and I'm like, do the interview, Dana, do it. You're like, fuck you, I'm not doing no interview with them dirt bags.
Yeah.
I'm like, let them have it. So, but they won't touch us now. You know, I used to do a few interviews here and there in the early days. They won't touch us with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, no, we definitely wised up a long time ago. And
I mean, they're so afraid of all this media, which is, like you said, you're just painting yourself in your corner. So I say it like this. They've all branded themselves in history, but so did we. And who was right? Not them.
No, we figured it out, basically, and now we're trying to salvage the planet. We're just trying to do something good.
I wrote a paper on the Mach 1, Mach 2, because I was at Weaver State in Algiers. Utah Construction is GE. They merged. By the way, Utah Construction built Chalk River, and that's when the first accident, right here. Utah Construction is from Ogden,
Right.
Florida, who merged in 1975 with GE, and they are GE. So
Right.
anyway, they built the reactors. So I wrote a paper clear back in the early 90s at the university on the Mach 1, Mach 2. and I wrote him about spent fuel pools. And the spent fuel pools I knew could only handle a 7.8, and I did a big study on it. And the cores could only handle probably about the same. And that was it. I knew that reactor was a Mach 1 and Mach 2 at Fukushima because it had a meltdown 20 years ago. By the way, on March 11th. It had a partial meltdown on March 11th, 1997. Fukushima Daiichi. And so I knew all about that reactor. I knew it was one of the most dangerous. I used to rank my top 10. I had it right up there. So I knew that this was a 9. And on the Richter, I'm like, there's no way. I knew this day one was immediately full-blown out meltdown. The second, the earthquake, not the tsunami. I knew these cores had fractured. I knew all the spent fuel pools were gone because they couldn't handle a 7.8, let alone a 9. And so I knew they were gone. And I reported they were gone. And people just viciously went at me. So, we told the truth in real time, right as it happened, and people chose to ignore it.
Yeah, a lot of it was drowned out by images of the tsunami on purpose, that displaced. A lot of people were drawn into it, including myself, obviously. Right, that was horrific.
Oh, it was compelling.
It was horrific.
That tsunami was a wicked. But the bottom line is, everybody, our lightning got out of the bottle. I mean, I literally had probably 50, 60, 70 million views. I was showing up on I made Spiegel the front page twice.
Yeah, you used to show up all the time. I used to see that myself.
I was everywhere and everything. So the rhetoric got out, and they went into cover-up mode immediately. And the sad thing is none of these scientists or these marine biologists or all of these muck-mucks that work for these none of them broke ranks. They all stood ground because of their money. And I always thought, well, you're going to get a couple that are going to break ranks. They're going to stand up. None of them did. And the reason they didn't is their golden handcuffs, their money. And it just shows you that's the kind of people that they recruit, including Miku Kaku. Miku Kaku went off at first, and he turned out to be a coward on the whole thing.
David Suzuki, too, yeah.
They just Suzuki... look how he turned coach.
Yeah, no kidding.
They all
Scary.
went for the money. They all went for the money. Every one of them, and just showed who they are. Well, it cost me my career. I could have went back to teaching. There's no way I can ever go back to teaching now.
No.
It cost me everything, but I was going. I got cancer. I was going to stand
you're
up.
a radical now, man.
Yeah, well, I always have been.
Well, I mean, you're definitely. You're meant to. What I mean to say is, you're meant to be a radical. You were born specifically for that, as far as I can tell.
Well, Freedom Eisenblau on the 200th anniversary of Waterloo, the greatest anti-nuclear Europe ever seen was her. She told me, she set up the meeting, she grilled me for 4 hours, didn't tell anybody she's full of cancer. And that's why she grilled me for 4 hours, and she didn't tell me she died. She says, you're the tip of the spear, and let me tell you, she says, you never picked it, it picked you.
Yeah.
You're it. You got me?
Yeah.
The first question she asked me was, she says, I want to ask you one question. How much energy does a nuclear reactor produce? And I said, negative. They have to use external power sources to keep their spent fuel pools cool and to run the pieces of shit.
That's right.
That's all I had to do. You're all over it. She says, that's all. She says, I know your dad's story. I know your past story. I don't even worry about it. You go. You go and don't look back. And
okay. So, Kevin, next week is full moons in the daytime.
Yeah, and we're going to get low tide at 2, 3 o'clock.
You're going to be out walking in the tidal zones and posting that at your YouTube channel, which is named Kevin Blanche, but for anybody that's not familiar. Okay, man, we're really looking forward to that. That's going to be... it's sad, right? Sad news, but we need that documentation, see? Yeah.
I don't cherry pick. I go in there naked, and whatever's there, you're going to see. If there's some...
Well, there's huge low tides, too, see? So it's going to be awesome to get that documentation is so important, man. People don't realize it.
Putting on that is the best tide pool supposedly in SoCal, they'll tell you. It's been closed for 2.5 years. Nobody's been in there. And so it reopened last month because of COVID. It reopened. But the first low tide was at 5 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning, and they don't open the gates till 9:30.
Right.
So nobody's seen it for 2.5 years, and the first low tide will be on Tuesday. And
Wow.
I'll be there. And so we'll get the first look in 2.5
Yeah, so
years.
Tuesday you're calling in if I forget to call you.
I'll call Tuesday. I'll Peter call on
Okay.
his phone.
God bless, Kevin. We'll see you soon, my friend. And,
All right, keep up your work, man.
and
Don't
thank
give
you.
up.
No, you know me.
All right.
Same with you, my friend. God
Yeah.
bless. Thank
You
you.
know a good radical, too.
Yeah.
So, don't say the F word.
Appreciate everything you're doing, Kevin. You take care. Okay,
you
we'll
too.
talk to you then. Yeah.
All right, then.
Yeah. Bye bye. That was Kevin Blanche with a huge update. That was a great update. And for the last show of the week, we did have somebody call from New York earlier. They can call back if you feel like it. We had Kevin on first, and it's not polite to cut people off. So we got spam pretty heavy tonight. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigns. Should the United Kingdom cancel Fukushima radioactive food imports and dirty nuclear plants? 68 votes, and 29% of them said no, which is... The first hour, there was no votes, and in a 15-20 minute period, 25, 26, 27% said no. So they were spam. That was 100% spamming. That's New York. Hello? Hello? You got a bad connection there, man. Hello? We got nothing but static. You got nothing but static. Hello? Well, I don't know what to do. That was heavy. They're playing me heavy static. So in one sense, you take it as a threat. They're going to silence the airwave or something. But why not have a conversation, right? Here's Kevin Blanche down at a different country at a United Nations meeting, IAEA and that, and when they're coming out, Kevin meets them.
Here we go. Here we go.
No more killing people for money. No more killing
Here's your
people
couple
for
of your
money.
big IAEA boards right
No
here.
more
These are your
cancer.
kingpins
No
right
more
here.
cancer for people.
IAEA are mass murderers. They killed the Pacific Ocean.
Cracks me up.
Thanks for giving me leukemia. The IAEA are mass murderers. Mass murderers, the IAEA.
With nuclear
What happens when you get cancer? What happens when you get it? What happens when you give yourself cancer? We'll keep these going. Stay untuned.
So awesome. It's one of my favorite clips. Kevin, thanks for giving me cancer, but he does like a U-turn. Afraid to have that conversation, right? Afraid to be honest for a single second. That's Kevin. Kevin stuck it to him, man. Look at Buddy's face when he come down the steps. Kevin's like, thank you for giving me cancer. And Buddy just changed his direction. I mean, but like they can't escape that reality, see? You know what I mean? They can't escape it. Okay, well, we got spammed pretty hard. It's probably one of the worst spams we've seen in quite a while. A staggering 29% spam in a 20-minute period, and then it stopped. But it would have been 100% yes that they should cancel Fukushima's radioactive food imports and dirty nuclear plants. We're still trying to raise money. There's the very two bottom links you can donate directly to me. That's the only two ways to donate to me. We got to raise money. We did raise $31 last night. From Nicholas P, I got showed up. Thank you. $31. And anybody wants to donate, we got so many projects. It's enough to make you sick to your guts that we're trying to catch up to, that we're behind on. And just general operating costs. The weather might break the weekend. We're going to go and look for spiders. We being me. I like to put the boat in the ocean, but I got to do work on it. Hopefully we'll get to that in the next number of weeks or something. They want to take my kidney in about 4 weeks. We don't want to do that. We're hammering down the DCA. And there's no way I'm losing my kidney. And I'm not giving them my kidney, so I got to figure this out. So, I'm not going to shoot at everybody tonight, but this was a song written in 1931 by a lady named Florence Reese, and it was recorded in 1941, 10 years later. I'm going to play that. I'm going to play that one for you. What they call at the time a socialist song. But I mean, people were being destroyed for $1 a day. And they were being robbed and taken advantage of by the same inbreeds. Their children now are in positions of authority across the world. These types of people. And so instead of a shout out tonight, we're just going to play this, and we'll end. I'll come in and say goodnight after, but I want to play that clip with pictures from those days.
From all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Right, so we'll see everybody Sunday at the regular time. Thank you again, Kevin. Glad to hear from you. Hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. You have a great night, great day tomorrow and the weekend. Enjoy your day. It's getting harder to do that in life. Try enjoying your day. It's summertime for most of you. We'll see everybody on Sunday's show, because we start our shows on Sunday. This is Thursday. Don't forget to give us a like or a thumbs up if you can do it. Put me in your bookmarks so you can find me later. Because they'll unsubscribe you. They unsubscribe a lot of people on this site. Take care, everybody. Hugs for everybody. God bless.